All right, thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you to the MPOC for having me present this paper today. I am Katy Revels from Fuji Vegetable Oil in the United States, and I have the honored position of being in between you and the afternoon tea break, so I will try to keep my presentation exciting and also short. So as introduced, my presentation is applications of palm oil and food ingredients production in the United States. A brief overview of my presentation, I'll introduce Fuji Vegetable Oil and discuss a little bit about the company, and also introduce the importance of fats and oils, specifically the significance of palm oil, palm kernel oil, and then just go into modification technologies for food ingredient applications and discuss applications in food, and then a brief introduction to R&D in palm oil. So Fuji Vegetable Oil in Savannah is under the Fuji Oil Holdings Group, which is composed of about 30 companies worldwide and many locations in Asia. Our home company is in Japan, and we've recently been expanding in North America and South America. We have 3 main economic units in vegetable oil, confectionery production, and then also food ingredient production. And the other food ingredients is mostly soy proteins. So Fuji Vegetable Oil was established in 1987 in Savannah, Georgia, in the United States. And we import RBD palm oil and its fractions and palm kernel oil from Malaysia and also Indonesia. And we make specialty fats and oils typically for confectionery applications with coatings, fillings, cocoa butter equivalents and substitutes, replacers. And then also we have various snack food applications, cereal applications, and non-food applications. We recently announced that we are expanding and building a new plant in New Orleans, Louisiana, and we recently obtained all of the necessary permits and have started groundbreaking, so our production will start up in 2020. So Kevin gave a really good overview of why fats and oils are important, as well as some of the background information that I'm going to discuss, but I'll briefly go over this. So fats and oils are very important for our nutrition. We really need them to survive. They help with carrying our oil-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, and provide essential fatty acids for building amino acids and proteins in our body. They provide energy in the value of 9 kilocalories per gram of fat, so very energy-rich, and also micronutrients in the form of sterols, tocopherols, carotenoids, and many others. And everyone needs to eat for nutrition, but it's also nice to eat food that tastes good. So fats and oils enhance flavors and textures of food, and also just help us enjoy what we're eating more. It tenderizes food, helps with aeration, also carries flavors and colors for the products that we eat. And then also, of course, traditionally, fats and oils are used for providing a heating medium for food preparation, and palm oil and other fats are in everyday products that we use. So again, Kevin introduced this very well. Fats and Oils 101. In the United States, a 101 course at the university is like the basic level, just kind of your introduction, get your feet wet into a topic. So this is my brief Fats and Oils 101 for you all. Triglyceride is a glycerol molecule with 3 fatty acids attached to the glycerol, and they're not homogeneous. They're composed of triglycerides with different fatty acids, and these fatty acids determine what characteristics the oil will exhibit. So melting point, solid fat content, and all of these are very important with how the fat will behave in a food application. Saturated triglycerides have no carbon-to-carbon double bonds. They're higher melting point oils and typically solid or semi-solid at room temperature, whereas unsaturated triglycerides have carbon-carbon double bonds. They're more liquid at room temperature and have a lower melting point. And again, just to emphasize, fats and oils aren't homogeneous. They are a mixture of triglycerides, and these fatty acids are the fingerprint of the oil. So you can analyze the fatty acid composition of an oil and really understand the characteristics that it will exhibit. So you look at your different chain lengths of carbons, and these are common fatty acids found in vegetable oils. So palm oil and palm kernel oil, why are they significant? This was touched upon as well in many other of the presentations. I thought I'd challenge you by using standard units instead of metric units for my slide. Make sure you're awake, do some unit conversions. But palm oil is a very efficient crop. The yield is much higher than any other tree, an annual crop, and with our growing population, obviously we need a solution to feeding all of the people that will be on this planet. So palm oil, palm kernel oil are a very good solution for this issue. Some characteristics of palm oil: the IV is typically around 52, melt point is around 35 degrees Celsius, and there are many micronutrients that are present in palm oil. Tocotrienols, tocopherols, squalene, coenzyme Q10, just to name a few, and there's a very balanced fatty acid composition between saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, and that's demonstrated in the palmitic acid and the oleic acid. So palm oil is also naturally semi-solid at room temperature and stable in the beta-prime polymorph. Palm kernel oil is a lower IV, a harder oil, and that IV typically ranges from 16.2 to 19.2 with a melting point between 26 and 28 degrees Celsius. It's highly saturated and mostly solid, semi-solid at room temperature. And the main fatty acid is lauric acid, which is C12, and then followed up by myristic and oleic acid. So I'm an engineer, and I like to discuss how we can use processing to make a fat that meets a functional requirement for food applications, just to give you an introduction to the end applications. So just very broad generalities on vegetable oil, what it's composed of. Obviously, mainly triglycerides with a small amount of di-monoglycerides, as well as minor components such as tocopherols, sterols, and pigments, and unwanted minor components like contaminants and impurities. There's also a small amount of phospholipids, and then, of course, free fatty acids. And then looking at the minor components, we have valuable minor components that we want to preserve when refining and processing, and then contaminants and side reactions that we don't want present in our end product of oil. So these valuable minor components we want to retain during refining, and they present a nutritional value to the customer. And contaminants such as polyaromatic hydrocarbons, pesticides, we want to prevent from ever entering the oil itself, and if it is present, we want to remove it during refining. And then, of course, side reactions, as discussed previously, 3-MCPD and GE, we want to prevent that from occurring, as well as polymerization and trans fatty acid formation. So to optimize our process, we want to focus on a few quality parameters, balancing the organoleptic qualities, such as a bland taste, no odor. Our customers like a light, brilliant color of palm oil in the United States, which is a challenge to achieve, but that's the market. Then, of course, high oxidative stability, thermal stability, and a long shelf life. And these are all standard and expected in our industry. But we have some new requirements that are coming about, such as high micronutrient content, no trans fatty acids, no contaminants, and no side reactions. And these are becoming increasingly more popular for our customers to specify. So we have a few tools to take palm oil and palm kernel oil and make it into, they're functional as they are in their natural state, but if we want it for a specific application, you can use these modification techniques to create an oil that meets your customer's requirement for the food application. So we have fractionation, dryer solvent, hydrogenation, inner esterification, bleaching, and then deodorization. So fractionating palm oil, as we heard, palm oil has two distinct fractions, stearine and oleine portion, and same with palm kernel oil, and this can be further fractionated into the softer and harder portions of the oil. Hydrogenation uses nickel catalyst to assist in adding hydrogen to the carbon-carbon double bond. It's a saturation and reduction reaction that generates saturated oil that's solid at room temperature, semi-solid at room temperature, increases the melting point, and also increases the stability of the oil. And there's no longer, it's no longer legal to do partially hydrogenation in the United States because of trans fatty acids. So all of our oil is fully hydrogenated. So just an example of what hydrogenation does to a solid fat content, you see palm kernel stearine, or PKS, and then hydrogenated palm kernel stearine, and you see that the solid fat content is increased and you have a harder oil as a result of the hydrogenation. Interesterification is rearranging fatty acids on the glycerol backbone using a catalyst, usually a strong alkoxide or enzymatic. And this is done without altering the fatty acid composition itself. So it can be random or selective, and you can use experimental and statistical models to predict what your triglyceride will be at the end of the reaction. And then again, an example of what your SFC turns into with using this modification technique. In enzymatic interesterification, you can take a hard oil and a soft oil with two distinct melting events and enzymatically interesterify them, rearrange them to create an oil with two broader melting events. And bleaching, of course, you're removing any impurities in the oil, color bodies, products of oxidation, trace metals, and creating a stable oil with a long shelf life. Deodorization, removing any free fatty acids that are present in the oil or other volatile compounds, degradation of oxidation components like aldehydes or ketones, and this extends the shelf life of the oil and creates a very bland and just neutral oil for the customer. So we have these tools in our toolbox now to use in food and ingredient applications. So just a refresher, previously, palm oil, we know that it has these characteristics, and it's very desirable to use in food production because of its balanced fatty acid composition, and its beta prime polymorphic state is also very nice for confectionery purposes. So a big application in the United States and globally is using palm oil for instant noodles. So you can pre-cook the noodles, fry them, and this allows the customer to just add water to the product and have it ready to eat in minutes. Very popular among the college kids in the United States. And palm oil also provides high stability for a long shelf life of up to 12 months, and it gives the noodles a really good texture. So the oil makes up about 20% of the product. Palm oil is also used as animal fat substitutes. So lard has a ratio of saturated to monounsaturated to polyunsaturated fats of 43 to 47 to 10, and palm oil is very similar, of 47, 45 to 8. And this is used in processed meat applications and also in some shortening substitutes. Palm oil is also very interchangeable with tallow. It has the same teeter, and it's used in similar applications as the lard substitute in ground beef, hamburger making, sausages, and this increases the stability of the product since animal fats that are traditionally mixed in are subject to oxidation, and then of course you have the issue of higher cholesterol and trans fats. So this is a healthier option as well. Palm oil is used as milk fat substitutes. In the United States market, there's an increasing demand for non-dairy cheeses and cheese analogs. So palm oil can be used in place of milk fat and provide a similar texture as the milk fat, similar mouthfeel, and really good flavor release. So this provides really good cheese options for vegans or people that are just looking to have lower cholesterol cheeses, and it's also a more economical option. Filled milk is another application for palm oil, and this is in the form of sweetened, condensed, and evaporated milk. So palm oil has similar functionality as milk fat in this application, and once again attractive for health reasons, and also stability and for pricing reasons. So of course, palm oil is used in bakery applications. This is my favorite. So icing, of course, you can use palm oil to give a really good creamy consistency and flavor release. And then in biscuits, which in the United States are savory and flaky and melt in your mouth bread, this gives really good fat pockets for moisture retention and flavor release. And then cookies is another application. Palm oil provides really good texture and moisture retention, and also is used in the production of chocolate chips sometimes. And then pizza dough, palm oil provides very good flavor in the dough. It enhances texture and creates a very plastic crust. And then also the plasticity of the dough helps in making a really good, even pizza crust for the customer, and then gives you a good texture whenever it's cooked. So it's used in fresh and frozen dough and also helps the dough from sticking together. Another application is ice cream. So ice cream is a colloid made of fat globules, ice crystals, a liquid portion, and then air pockets. And usually milk fat makes up about 10 to 16% of the ice cream colloid. And palm oil has been used in a substitution of the milk fat in ice cream in 60% of the milk fat up to 100% of the milk fat total replacement, and has very good texture, flavor release, and mouthfeel. Very smooth and creamy. And palm oil has a stability that whenever it's frozen, it maintains its structure very well. And then whenever the consumer goes to take the product out of the fridge, they want to be able to eat it right away, and palm oil provides that flexibility as well. They don't have to wait a long time. It doesn't melt too quickly, and it feels really good whenever you're eating it. It melts appropriately. So a fraction of palm oil, the liquid fraction palmoline, has these characteristics, and it's liquid even at room temperature. So in the United States, soybean and canola are very big liquid oils, since that's the area that they're produced in, with soybean especially. So palmoline has the benefits of being very stable and having high micronutrient compositions. And we've seen an increasing demand of mixing palmoline with the traditional soybean and canola frying oils in the United States because of the stability, the clarity, and the high levels of these micronutrients. So palmoline is very resistant to gumming, to polymerization, to oxidation, and degradation into free fatty acids. So this has really helped our food industry use their frying and cooking oils for longer and save money in that facet. Palm stearin, or the solid portion of palm oil, is used as a hard stock for margarine that replaces the trans fat portion that we previously were seeing in the market. And you can further process palm stearin and palmoline into palm mid fractions. So palm stearin, as I mentioned, is used in margarine and also shortening. So with margarine, you need a fat in your emulsion that helps with the flavor release and stability. And typically this was a partially hydrogenated oil in the past, but now with fractionation technologies and R&D, we've been able to replace the trans fat with the palm stearin as a hard stock. And a typical application is interesterification of palm kernel olein with palm stearin to make a margarine fat. And you get really good crystallization with beta prime crystals, have a very smooth mouthfeel, and really good melting properties. And then, of course, the ratio can be modified depending on what type of margarine you're making, a baking margarine or tub margarine or a block margarine. And so palm mid fraction has soft and hard fractions, and this provides really good flexibility for customer applications with the different IVs and solid fat contents. So as Kevin mentioned, the high levels of POP triglycerides, PO triglycerides, gives very appealing qualities for confectionery purposes. So a big application in the United States is cocoa butter replacer, CBR. And a few years ago, this was typically, CBRs were made with partially hydrogenated soybean oils with levels of trans up to 45%. So obviously, this needed to change whenever trans fat, we realized, hey, this increases our levels of LDL cholesterol. This is bad for you. So through development of different PMF blends, you can use chemical interesterification to get a similar no trans cocoa butter replacer. And then, of course, you have your applications with enrobing, using harder fractions for compound coatings so that you have a very stable product that doesn't melt at storage conditions, and then using softer oils with palm mid fractions, using chemical interesterification to make filling fats that are very soft and creamy. And of course, as I previously mentioned, the crystallization is really ideal for this. It's very similar to cocoa butter. And then again, looking at replacing a trans fat application, wafer barrier fat, typically was a partially hydrogenated soybean oil as well in the United States, and using a blend of palm fractions, we were able to achieve a no trans barrier fat that helps with moisture migration prevention and also a creamy chocolate filling in between the wafers. And then palm kernel oil, as mentioned, is very highly saturated, semi-solid at room temperature, and mainly composed of lauric fatty acids. Has a very sharp melting profile and is thus used in confectionery applications and ice cream applications. So similar to palm oil, palm kernel oil provides a smooth texture to ice cream. It's not blended in as high of ratios to milk fat. It's typically only up to 40% milk fat replacement in ice cream because it's just harder. But the sharp melting profile gives a really good release of the flavor in the ice cream colloid. And then a big application is bread and baked goods, because the solid fat content and fatty acid composition gives very good qualities at room temperature with baked goods, and a good interaction with the protein, since that's the basis of bread, is the interaction with the gluten and gliadin proteins with wheat to make a really good network that consumers like to eat. So hydrogenated palm kernel oil is widely used in caramel production in the United States because caramel requires a lot of heating. It's very tough on the fat component of the product, and hydrogenated lauric oils provide high stability at high temperatures. Whipped toppings is another application, also due to the oxidative stability of the fully hydrogenated fat, and it gives a very good flavor and mouthfeel with the whipped topping. Non-dairy creamers for coffee, also very tough production on the fat component of the product. It involves spray drying, and the hydrogenated palm kernel oil can withstand these very tough processing conditions, and then also melt really quickly in the application. And then also hydrogenated and esterified palm kernel oil is used for cocoa butter substitutes in the United States, and it can be blended with other palm kernel sterines for different candy applications and softer caramels. Palm kernel olein is used for confectionery coatings, so a lot of times ice creams are coated with palm kernel olein because of its ability to set up very quickly and the fact that it's not very brittle. And then it melts really quickly whenever the consumer takes the product out of the fridge, takes a bite, it melts with the ice cream at the same time. It's also used as a moisture barrier for frozen treats, so spraying a chocolate compound into a cone to prevent the cone from getting mushy whenever the ice cream's interacting. It prevents that moisture migration. And then hydrogenated and esterified palm kernel olein is also used for compound coatings. Okay, and then palm kernel stearine used for candies, same thing. So, and I already mentioned cocoa butter substitute fat. So just kind of an overview and to touch on what a few other presenters have already discussed, palm oil, food, ingredient, R&D challenges, and then overcoming these. So R&D in the palm oil industry is generally driven by making a better product more efficiently, and then of course regulatory bodies, consumer opinions, and cost savings. So a big consumer opinion, and then of course guidelines with various governing bodies are no trans fat, and then investigating 3-MCPD and glycidyl ester limitations. So trans fat is now completely illegal in the United States to use. 5 years ago, the FDA had issued a notice saying that trans fat is no longer generally regarded as safe, so they removed the GRAS status. And then partially hydrogenated oils became completely illegal as of June 2018. So there's nothing on the shelves anymore with trans fat in the United States. And this was a really big market for palm oil and kind of made a boom in the United States because we needed a replacement option, and palm oil has amazing qualities for different applications. So using blends, fractionation, interesterification, we can replace all these partially hydrogenated oils. And then this was touched upon as well in great detail, and I won't do it the same justice, but 3-MCPD and GE are of course a big issue. In the United States as well, there was a lot of scandal around Nutella, and my grandma's calling me asking me if Nutella is safe to eat, and I'm having to reassure a lot of people that it's fine. It's just, the public opinion is blowing this matter out of proportion. So, and then of course recommendations for refining oils to get low levels of 3-MCPD and glycidyl esters are very important. And then just a little bit of a guideline for choosing healthy fat. It can be confusing, but of course try not to eat trans fats in your diet, try to eliminate them, and limit your intake of fast food. Of course, eat omega-3 and omega-6 rich foods to get your essential fatty acids, and consume palm oil and palm kernel oil to get your vitamin A and vitamin E, coenzyme Q10, and other micronutrients that are important with your brain health and lowering blood pressure and all of that. So I'd like to acknowledge the MPOC and my company members for their input on my presentation, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.